Welcome to the Be Allin podcast. We are super excited to be sitting here with our first ever interviewed guest, Will Henke.
G'day, team.
An American accent. You probably don't recognize that one. I'm going to be leading the conversation. Bailey is behind the camera today, but if you hear his voice chime in, you might realize what he's here for as well. Okay, so we're going to start. We're in a different location as well. We're sitting actually is this a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym?
It is dojo.
Okay, we're in a
jungle.
we're in a dojo right now at Fitness Botany. We're here for the Burgener Level 2 Strength course, which is why Will has flown in from Bali to help deliver the course, lead the course. Are you excited?
Very excited. There's not I think this is the first Level 2 in Australia since before COVID. So I'm super excited. When I did the Level 2 with you guys back in Bali last year, I think it was December timeframe last year.
Yeah, it was.
Cody wrote me after. Cody is one of the lead coaches for all of Burgener Strength and does their coaches development. He wrote me immediately and he was like, next year, me and you, Level 2 in Australia, let's go. And I was like, say less.
So good.
Yeah.
It's exciting. We've got, is it 22 athletes here?
22 coming in.
Yeah.
And I think there might be a few others that trickle in, but we were saying earlier, that sweet spot is 18 to 24, where the energy is really tangible and it's good energy. People are around, people throw weights around, but it's also a lot of interactive. And this course, from seeing just the people on it, there's a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
And although it is an athlete camp, it's nice when you can have both the coaching side of it and also the athletic development side. So there'll be a lot of good input and interaction from everyone.
Yeah, we're super excited to be here, be a part of it. We have almost all of our BayFit coaches being involved, and it's going to be such a fun weekend. So I guess that explains why we're here, but I guess the real reason why we're here is to talk to you more about you, your story, and your whole life. So I thought I would start with a bit of a synopsis of who is Will Henke. This is from my research. So
I'm looking forward to hearing this.
Born and raised in the United States of America, Will always had a strong passion to help people. And that is what led Will to enlist in the US Army, where he served an honourable 9 years within the Special Operations community. In serving, being fit was not just a hobby, but necessary for survival. After leaving the military, Will leveraged his passion for health and fitness to educate and empower people to help them reach their own goals. Along this journey, Will has truly become a leader in the worldwide fitness community, being a lead coach for Burgener Strength, CrossFit Level 2 accredited, USA Weightlifting accredited. Will is now one of the proud owners of Bambu Fitness, one of the most aesthetic gyms in the whole world, in our opinion, in Uluwatu Bali, which has a rich and growing community. Along with a coach, Will is now an entrepreneur with multiple businesses in property development, online training, and so much more, which we can't wait to unpack today.
When you say it like that.
I guess that's right. a little insight into who you are. So I guess, how would you describe yourself, and what would you even say your job title is now when we say all that?
I certainly wouldn't go that much in depth. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's when you're in your own life and you do the things daily that you do, you don't realize when you take a step back and you speak about the things that you do, you're like, oh, I guess I do have a bit of a full plate, or I am doing some things that are not just normal. Carrie and I have started from very humble beginnings. Essentially, our first entrepreneurship was Airbnb. That was back when I was still in the Army, and that's a whole wild story of how we got started with properties. Maybe we'll talk about it today, maybe we won't. But it speaks very loudly to how we just do things.
Yeah.
Carrie and I both don't come from a family of entrepreneurship. We don't come from, my father has a painting company and he's done it himself, but he's his own employee because he just can't work with other people, so he does it himself. But it's been interesting. And to answer your question, how would I describe myself in what I do? I don't know. I'm a coach. I love coaching people. I love helping people, and I think that's the why that I've set out for myself is I help people. I like helping people that don't know how to effectively help themselves, whether that's training or anything. And I look back to with our coaches, we do coaches development, and a part of that is asking them, hey, why are you coaching? And if they don't know why they're coaching, how can you actually be an effective coach if you don't know why you're there? So for me, it was understanding that beforehand, but I had to go back and strip back away. All right, I was in the military. What did I do before that? I was a lifeguard. what I do before that. Okay, I also did some side job of like being a property adjuster for people back like when natural disasters happened. And like you strip it back away, and when you look at it all, not from an individual standpoint of each job, but like what does each job entail? And it was like helping people that were in distress, right? Military, lifeguard, property adjustment, as far as like putting in claims and things like that. So that really allowed me to understand like, all right, I like helping people. And like that's a cliche thing, but for me, fundamentally, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And if I can tie those fundamental like characteristics with what I'm passionate about, fitness, training, you know, all that stuff, then that sets me up for the life that I want to live and the dreams that I want to chase.
That's awesome. And I couldn't describe you better than being a people person. Having been to Bambu, which is your home gym, you are the most radiant coach that has this insanely infectious energy. And I think that sets the tone for every class that I've trained in that you've been the lead coach on. Like that ability to relate to people is so unique, and you can see how that's intertwined into all of your businesses now, which is amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we start at the beginning, how would you describe, I guess, your upbringing? You've obviously touched on being a people person, but I guess what led you across your journey to then want to enter into the military, which I feel like is quite a unique and critical point of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a very typical like upbringing. I had a sister, a mom, and a dad, and mom and dad split when I was younger, but treated very well. My mom worked 3 jobs to be able to provide for my sister and I for things, and to allow me to play sports, the whole Letterman jacket, basketball, football, baseball, throughout high school. And the plan was to play basketball, to go to college and, have aspirations like every young kid does that plays ball, to want to play in the NBA.
Which makes sense, because how tall are you? 6?
About 6'5".
Yeah. Okay.
Which in normal people height, that's tall, but basketball, that's pretty average.
Yeah.
So I had that, and I had the choice of playing collegiate level sports at any of those 3. I chose basketball. It's probably the hardest one to get a scholarship for based off that. Being 6'5" and pitching for baseball, like I'd have a much better chance of going on to a team than I would be an average height basketball player who is, but I chose that one. And during recruitment camps and exhibition games, I got injured. And that injury led the letter of intent that I had from the college that I wanted to commit to like revoke that letter. So then I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go into community college and do a couple of years and then be a big fish in a small pond, and then go transfer to another bigger Division I school and then work my way up. And if I don't get there, then maybe walk onto a team instead of getting drafted. Spent 1 semester and I was like, absolutely not. I cannot sit at a desk anymore.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be in that environment. So then my plan B was always military. I come from a very proud line of like military service in my family. My father, my stepfather, my grandparents, or my grandfather on both sides. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. So went and joined that, left on my mom's birthday, which she was devastated about. So January 2nd, 2008 is when I joined. Went and did that, and then essentially started my training, and that's kind of where like my military background changed. There's a thing called the ASVAB, and essentially it's an aptitude and battery test. Like you have to take it before. It measures intelligence within mechanics, mathematics, engineering, and they kind of learn where to place you within the military. If you score like certain levels, you're not allowed to do certain jobs because they see it as like a waste of an asset from the military. So the score that I scored, I couldn't do the job that I wanted to do. And the recruiter was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to do this. And he was like, cool, you can't. You have to do one of these jobs instead. So I joined and did that. But because the jobs that I was suited for were dealing with things like military intelligence or things with higher level capacity of thinking, I was one of the more fitter people within that space. A lot of nerds, a lot of like World of Warcraft playing people, either very thin or very overweight. So I got noticed very quickly from being the shape that I was in. So I got kind of like hand-plucked from where I was at and then said, hey, like we think you should go over to this like more elite section, which is where I joined Special Operations. Yeah. I was in that for a majority of my time in the military service. That's how I got started doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is an insane experience that, again, like especially in Australia, I feel like we don't really know anyone that's been served for the country, whereas you've obviously done something that's extraordinary.
I got to work with a few of like the Australian guys, the SAS guys.
Yeah, wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's insane. So you have your time in the military, I guess, then you decide to leave. What sort of made you make that decision?
She's about 5'11" and blonde hair. Love of my life. So I met Carrie when I was still in the military. I was stationed in Germany for a lot of my time, and Carrie was in Germany at the same time, just like young girls do, being a gypsy, doing all that stuff. We met kind of on accident. Although I was in Germany for a very long time, about just over 5 years, of my 5-year time in Germany, I was only there for maybe 2 years collectively. Because like the job that I did was very mobile. I was very on the go. Like I'd come home for 48 hours from an 8-month trip and say, hey, like we need the specialty that you offer. Can you go with this team? And because I was single, I was 19 when I first got there. I was like, yep, in.
Yeah.
Let the dads be home for Christmas with their kids. I'm happy to go forward and like do the things that we actually train to do and not just do training all the time. I was home for a very short amount of time. I had just gotten home from a course called, essentially it's selection within special operations. And my buddy who I worked with, he was like, hey man, like my roommate is like a cat. She's a good chick. She's looking for a good time. And I was like, oh, thanks man, but like, nah, I'm good. And he was like, bro, do me a favor. Like I owed him a favor, and I won't share what that favor was for, but like I owed him a favor, and he was like, do me a solid, like take her out. And I was like, okay. Met Carrie, and then 5 months later we were married.
Wow.
So it was a very whirlwind, first date was a steakhouse, second date was sushi, third date we flew to Rome, and then not too soon after that we were engaged, and the next month after we were married.
Wow.
So, but when I met her, that's when doing the things that I used to do in the military, you can do them married. I say this in the most loving way, being married can be a distraction. Mm-hmm. And distractions are one of the most dangerous things that you can have when you're actually doing your job. So I found that I didn't want to put myself or like my boys in a position where I was not fully there. And I found when I was like out doing things that I was my most happy because I was doing the job that I had. I was really fulfilled like professionally. But then when I went home and I was around Carrie, it wasn't her, but I missed like, hey, I joined the military to do things, not just to train, to actually go and have like a positive impact on people.
Yeah.
So when I was away, she would see me very passionate and happy, professionally fulfilled. But when I was home, she would see me like very down and like, I just want to leave. And it's not a healthy environment to be in for a marriage. And I made that decision to get married, and that needed to be an important factor in my decision making.
Yeah.
So I told her, I said, listen, like if I can get out of the Army and do something I'm genuinely passionate about and that can fulfill me, I'll do it. I was like, but I don't know what that is. And at the time, I didn't know what CrossFit was. This was like 2012. We did like some bits and pieces, but never really the full thing.
Yeah.
And finally, I was like, hey, listen, like, we'll move away and do stuff. So I ended up taking a resting tour and going to a lesser duty station that didn't have me leaving so often, so I could be home. Because our first 2 years of marriage, I believe I saw Carrie for about 8 weeks.
Wow.
So we left, got married. I actually met her parents after we got married. She met my parents.
That would have gone down well.
Yeah, I mean, hey, like it was.
It's what you have to do.
We're 13 and a half years in, so like, they have to like you know. But yeah, so we did that, and then we got married, and then I went away to Maryland for some like train up before I left, and Carrie just stayed in a hotel with me for 8 weeks, and then I'd be gone for a long day training and come back, and she'd have no idea what I was doing. Very challenging for her to be in, right? Like, and then I went home with her to Germany. I was there for a week, and then left for 8 months. Came back for about 3 weeks, left for another 10 months. And then like after the 2 years, she was like, hey, like I kind of like to see you. I know you said you'd be gone, but this is kind of ridiculous. So I was like, all right, fair enough. Like what I'll do is I'll shift some things around and take a resting tour where I can go away and we can have time. I hated it because it's not what I joined to do.
Yeah.
So then there was that like really strange in between time where I was like, all right, I joined to do this, but I never planned on getting married. Carrie came into my life and ruined it in the best way possible for my goals, and I need to now make another decision based off of the new information that I have in my life. So I took the time prior to Carrie coming on. I would, part of my role within my unit was to train and prepare soldiers for combat. So that's a very, very sport-specific coaching role. I wasn't a coach then. I was just very fit. And it was like, all right, Will, like, obviously you know what you're doing. Like, get other guys prepped. So then that kind of turned into like a very sport-specific role of coaching for, all right, I know what the missions entail. I know what capacity we need as far as carrying things or steady hand of shooting or endurance as far as like moving slow with heavy loads for long distances. And then when I went to my next duty station in the States, Carrie actually is the one who introduced me to CrossFit. I was away for training again. And she was, I'm going to go with one of my girlfriends I just met, and we're going to do this thing called CrossFit. And I was like, I've heard of it. I've heard not great things, so yeah, have fun. And then she did it and came back, and she was like, I think you'd fucking love this. And I was like, all right, I'm down. So I went, and the first workout that I did was Murph. Yeah, so like for those that are listening, Murph is a hero workout in CrossFit. And, you usually wear a weighted vest, but you don't have to, and it's a mile run, 300 air squats, or 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and then another mile run. If you can wear a 20-pound vest or a 14-pound vest, do it. It's brutal. It's not, it's meant to be brutal, right? It's commemorating, one of the fallen soldiers, Lieutenant Mike Murphy. But that's where I kind of learned that. And then I learned, all right, what's the methodology behind it? What's weightlifting? I'm a giraffe for those that don't know me. I'm 6'5" and tall and very weird proportions and levers and lengths. So I had to figure out, like, how do I do this as someone who's tall with most people weightlifting being short?
Yep.
So when I found CrossFit, I got into it going all in, as I do with everything that I decide to do. And then I started coaching it just for fun. And then while I was there coaching it, the guy that owned the gym was like, hey, like, I wish you would not go to your next duty station and be our head coach. And I was like, okay, well, I just got this huge promotion that was going to take me from Florida to going to North Carolina. And this promotion that I got was something that is not normal. I applied for it. There's like 5,000 people that applied for it, and there's 2 people that actually got picked up for it. So I had this like letter of recommendation for super high ranking officers. I made a lot of people angry by turning that down, and accepting it first and then eventually turning it down because this guy's name is Storm. He owns a gym in just outside of Miami. He's like, yeah, I wish you would take the role of head coach and run the gym for me as his first employee. And I was like, make me some kind of legitimate offer and I'll consider it. Made me an offer that was more than half my pay cut. On paper, financially, it was not smart. My mom was like, please don't leave the military. You have great insurance for you and your wife. You have job stability, you have this, and you're going to leave and go like become a coach and do what? And like, but for me, I told Carrie, I was like, listen, I said, if I found something I was passionate about, I would get out and take that risk. And Carrie had built up, she had a skincare business at the time that she had started when we moved to Miami, and she had built it to a level where she did so well that it allowed me to take that risk of like, all right, we can take a pay cut. We have money saved. You're earning now. Let me try and do something else. That way my happy currency can increase. Because I was then doing the job I didn't sign up to do.
Yeah.
And I'd come home, I'd be in the office angry and fluorescent lighting in a cube with no windows. Go home late at night, I'd be in a bad mood because I was not doing things that I wanted to do. And then Carrie would see me pissed off and I'd be at the office not happy. So then it was like, all right, how do we fix this and get into like chasing our dreams?
Yeah, and I guess coming back to when you said before that you were about helping people, going away from coaching people would be a tough thing to stay where you were at then. That is an insane story to think about, knowing where you both are now and that history and having that huge risk and a pivotal moment of making a choice, which was obviously difficult at the time, but I guess where you are now, it has truly paid off. That is just wild.
I would say so, yeah.
So I guess that catapults your health and fitness career in the industry. And at some point along the journey, I guess from going to where you were coaching, there was an opportunity and a choice to move to Bali, of all places, from the United States. How did that decision come about?
Also 5'11", blonde hair.
She seems like the whimsical one that likes to travel and go to different places.
She very much is, and she often says that like in a lot of like relationships there needs to be a balloon and then also a string to a balloon, and I'm very much an anchored string.
I too am an anchored string.
So it was I had been out of the military now for a little bit. Carrie was like, hey, I really want to we want to start a family. She was like, hey, before we settle down and start a family, why don't we go to Bali? And, I really want to get my yoga teacher training certification. She's like, do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm down for a good time. I thought at the time, I was like, that's when Ramwad came out, kind of. And I was like, you know what? I'll go and learn some yoga practices and get my certification for the 200 hour. And I'm going to put something together where it's not quite that, but something a little bit different. And I approached the gym owner and I was like, hey, here's what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to go take 2 months of unpaid leave, and I'm happy to help, for free to still do stuff behind the scenes. And he said didn't align with what he needed, and couldn't offer me that time off unpaid that he needed to potentially fill the coaching role. Mm-hmm. And, that was something that I needed to potentially start a family in that area and be committed to that gym. And because I wasn't able to get what I was needing, it just made more sense to say, hey, listen, I understand, do what you need to do for your business. I'm going to take this as notification of my contract not extending at the end of it. And then once it ended, Carrie and I went to Bali. And we took a 2-month trip. We took a month to do the YTT certification in 200 hours in Ubud. We went to Greece and ripped around on 4-wheelers and kind of stayed in Canggu for a little bit longer. And that's where we really made the decision. And we were out at a cafe. And it's funny, just back in 2017, it's funny how things happen.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have been the Bali that it is now as well. What's that?
No.
7 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely different now. Some things, some not. Some things good, some things not as good.
Yeah.
But Canggu was a special place back then.
Yeah.
Special to Carrie. I'm not saying it's not special now, but it's a reason I live in Uluwatu.
Yeah.
But we were at a cafe and someone overheard us talking about, do you think we could actually move here? And Carrie talking to me about it. And they were like, oh, by the way, if you need a visa agent, here's mine. They're great. And it just everything kind of fell into place. And we needed to get our dog watched, and we needed to have my car sold, and then our apartment rented. And Carrie's like, oh, I bet you could do that. And I was like, oh, easy. So I got it all done in 4 hours. And I was like, yeah, cool. And she was like, oh, so we're going to come. And I was like, oh, no. You were just saying if I could do it. And I was showing you that it was very easy to do. So one of our good friends, they were looking for a dog, and they loved our dog the same that we did. They were super excited about, his name is Leo. They're super excited to watch Leo. And when we moved to Bali for a year, every 3 months, Kara and I would be like, all right, how long are we going to stay here? And we're like, all right, how about a year from now? And it was like, all right, how about a year from now? And finally that turned into 2 years, 3 years, 4, and then now we're over 7 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and luckily with our friends that are watching the dog, at 3 years, Leo was 6. They had him more than half the time he was alive.
Yeah.
And we were like, we can't rightfully take him back. You guys have had him longer. And they were like, oh God, thank God. They were so stoked about it. And that was the hardest thing for us, was leaving Leo. And then obviously our family is in the States, so we've lived away for so long.
Yeah. And then, so you were living in Canggu initially, weren't you? That was the home base, working in the health and fitness industry?
Yes. So when we moved to Bali, we actually started in 2017, we started a company called WanderFit Retreats.
Yeah.
And we still operate that today. It's an active adventure and fitness retreat company, where essentially we just take small groups on super dope, fun, active vacations.
They look very fun.
Yeah, we just it's good banter, good training, good community. And that's the things that I think we're missing. And that was really highlighted during COVID, where community became such a misunderstood part of people were missing it from just a normal life of normalcy. So we went there to start that. And when we moved to Bali, there's a gym in Canggu. They needed help. One of their owners left for a vacation, and he was like, hey man, I heard you coach, can you help me out while I'm gone? And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So stood in for him for a month while he was gone, and then when he came back, he was like, hey, we're actually down coaches, would you mind staying on? And yeah, so I stayed on for about a year just doing some part-time coaching while we were building out our retreat company.
Yeah.
Before, in 2018, our retreat company got mentioned in Forbes as one of the best fitness retreats in the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we didn't even know about it. It was on accident. But when that happened, the retreats took off.
Yeah.
And that's when we needed to really kind of step away and focus in on the businesses that were ours. Mm-hmm. A lot of travel, we were doing 17 retreats at a year at one point. So you're, think 17 weeks out of the year plus days on the back end and front end to make sure you're over jet lag, and also time for Carrie and I as a marriage, to stay connected. was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And then we started our online fitness training program about 2019 or 2018. That's all this what we have now, which is Bambu Training, which operates all the programs that are inside of the gym in Bali.
Yeah. And then somewhere along the journey as well, Bambu Fitness is an idea that's born and a gym that's created. How did that come about at all, especially if you're sort of living this traveling lifestyle to then say, let's really set our roots and make Uluwatu our home base?
I did not want to live in Canggu anymore.
Yep.
Canggu is great for a lot of things and everyone loves it. While I was there, I found it very difficult to connect with people. I think the guys that were there, the military time, there was a lot of fraternal, male community. And that is something I really have missed. Couldn't find it in Bali, not in Canggu. Not that it was in Uluwatu, but it wasn't in Canggu. But we'd go down to Uluwatu and there'd be stuff to do for about 2 nights. And then there'd be no significant gyms there to train at. No vibe, no community. So then everyone would just go back to Canggu. So after a while, I told Carrie, I was like, man, I love it down here, but there's no gym. Why don't we just build a gym, and try to fix all the things that we think are wrong with gyms in general these days? And I think the biggest thing for me was a lot of gyms prioritize things that shouldn't be prioritized for a gym. And then for me, it's the coaching. That's the reason why I wanted to open a gym, was one, to create a community for us to be at in Uluwatu. The surf is great there. The beaches are the best on the island. It still feels like an island. There's hills, there's cliff tops, there's the beaches, the white sand and blue water, but there just wasn't anything there to contribute to staying there longer term. So I was like, let's do it. I already have an amazing group of coaches online, and I'm so grateful for them because I told them all, hey guys, I'm thinking about doing this, and they're like, we're coming. Some I had to kind of poke a bit to get them out there. But in the end, they all had this trust in me to say, yeah, okay, let's do it. And they shifted their lives around to change, and some came back to Bali. Some had never lived there before. And that's such a cool thing to think about, that people had that much trust in what we were able to do and that they wanted to be part of it. And a lot of those coaches are still coaching at the gym.
Which is wild. And a few things to touch on there. I think Bailey and I went to Bali when we were maybe 18 or 19. We were much younger when Bambu wasn't around. We'd stayed in Canggu, then we went, exact same experience. We went to Uluwatu. We loved the slightly slower pace, the cliff tops, the beaches down there. Everything was just so beautiful, but there wasn't a gym, and we were going to some tiny little commercial gym that, I don't know, it wasn't the scene. And I remember just thinking, we'll go back to Canggu for that exact experience. We didn't have somewhere to train. But then having now been to where Bambu is, and for those who haven't seen it, you need to look it up online, because the way that both you and Carrie have inserted yourselves in there, the space is so beautiful from an aesthetic way. And how does Carrie describe the look? It's a Tulum. Is that the inspiration?
So it's funny, when we were started, there's actually 4 of us that run it.
Yep.
It's not just Carrie and I. We have an amazing team, an ownership team, but the people that actually are in the gym, the staff, everyone there, the coaches, they're the ones that actually bring it to life, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we went to Tulum. We were there for a retreat, and we went for about a week beforehand. And Carrie's like, all right, I'm here to get some inspiration. And we realized, we were walking around and we were like, man, there's a lot of Bali inspired stuff here. And then as you were looking at the pueblos and just the more unrefined things that make Tulum aesthetic Tulum, Carrie's like, we should do the opposite. We should bring Tulum to Bali, which Bali has more refined. It's not as rugged.
Yeah.
So her idea was looking at the gym. You have the cafe on the left-hand side when you're facing it from the road. The cafe is going to be more Tulum inspired, and then Bali is going to be more inspired for the gym space. Yeah. So essentially, it was taking a Tulum twist on that, but marrying it with Bali.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what she's done. And then now with the recovery center, she's had a more of a Moroccan feel to it. So the places that we've traveled that we really like, and that she likes the aesthetic, she takes the best of those and tries to make them cohesive.
Yeah, it is just so, you just have to look it up online so you can get a view of what it's like. And if you're looking to travel, that's the place you've got to go. But then even from the coaching standpoint, with our BayFit coaching team, I always say to them, Bambu is the standard of how they deliver a class in going back and forth between like a lead coach and a secondary coach, the way you guys operate things. And I don't know if it's like a touch from like even like that military background of how you communicate with the class, that it's just so clear and so efficient, and that they always know, I guess, who is in charge and how to respect that authority, but in a very fun and creative way. Is that how you, like, how did that whole way of delivering classes for you come about?
It took a while.
Yeah.
When I got out of the military, you could imagine it was very like militaristic in my delivery. Way too much on the other end.
Yes.
And I had to figure out like, all right, like people aren't really receiving what I'm communicating. And it's funny, I'm sure you both can like align with this, is you get coaches like, yeah, they have cooler talk. Like, oh man, like there was like this person today and they just like weren't listening. And it actually drives me crazy to hear coaches talk like that. Because yes, there are some people that are more challenging to like speak to, but then if a coach is saying, hey, they're not doing it, that means you're not doing your job. Like your job is to communicate change. And if you're not communicating it effectively, they can't change. So like, then you need to strip back and look at yourself. What could I have done better? Or maybe I could have called in another coach to say the same thing in a different way that they maybe, or maybe not, would have understood. So like, it's understanding like, all right, I'm a communicator. That's what coaches are. And then you just so happen to be in the fitness industry. And then within Bali, you're now doing all of that within a hospitality industry. So like, we don't have athletes at our gyms.
Yeah.
We have guests, right? And it's speaking to them in a very different mindset where they are more comfortable and, you know, we're serving them their fitness instead of them coming in and we're coaching them. So it comes from a mindset of, all right, how are we deciding the avatar? What do they wear? How much do they make? What are they into? What are their interests and hobbies? And then how do they want to be talked to? How do they communicate it to? And then for me, it's like, all right, how do I teach the coaches? And how do I explain in the most simple form possible things that can be very complex? And I think a lot of newer coaches speak in complexities with athletes. Oh, like you need to externally rotate your armpits and you need to not have a valgus knee fault when you squat, right? Like coaches should understand at a very basic biomechanical level of how to communicate that stuff and what that stuff means. But you should never be saying that to a member. The moment you do that, one, you're trying to flex like your intelligence and you sound like an idiot. But I think it's understanding like the right place and right time. And I think that takes a lot of development from like, you know, what I expect and how I coach. And it's constantly like talking to coaches. We do evals at our gym often. You know, all the coaches go through. Now Sam, who's a friend of mine and also our head coach for the gym, he's now doing evals. So now they're getting eval by myself, eval by Sam. And then now we just brought another coach on as a senior coach, Karen. You guys are familiar with Karen. Yeah. You know, she's going to be coming in and doing eval soon too. So the goal eventually is to have all coaches have the ability to evaluate each other. So you have this peer evaluation of everyone going in and not just owner to employee, but like peer to peer.
Yeah.
Because that's when you can really learn, how you should be doing things and how to communicate things better.
Yeah. And I think you definitely can feel that all the coaches are working as one unit, that they're not individuals against each other at all. It's like this cohesive way that they can deliver a class, which I think, again, I often say is the benchmark, and it's what we're striving to be more like. And those that go and train at your gym, I feel like will also understand that level of execution is unlike anywhere else that I've been before. So you're a coach. I think entrepreneur is like another word which I would go on. I know there's a lot in your pipeline. What can you allude to? What is next in your vision for the empire that you are building?
There's certainly some things in the background that I can't talk about. They're fucking exciting though. But give me a second to see how I can talk about this. Let me speak to it, and then afterwards, if we need to cancel it.
Yeah, I can cancel it. Cool.
There is one thing that we're slowly working on, Sam and I, and it's kind of goes to the same thing you just talked about, is when you start coaching, you're not really taught how to coach. Like, let's say you're in the CrossFit space, and like, all right, I'm gonna go do my level 1, and then you do a course over a weekend, and like now you're a level 1, but like you don't have the knowledge or experience of coaching. Say you're a normal S&C coach at a gym for just bodybuilding, you go and do your NASM CPT, and like, all right, you've done your course, like, do you have the experience of doing that now? And there's a pretty large disconnect of like that with going onto the floor with education and then going onto the floor. And we've heard quite a bit with like coaches that say, hey, we really like and appreciate how the coaches at Bambu do that. Can you teach me? And we've heard it enough now where, you know, I've approached Sam and we're like, hey, like, why don't we potentially look at creating some kind of an academy? Not a weekend course, but like a comprehensive extended course that goes through basic biomechanics, effective communication, you know, branding to some consent, or some branding to a little bit if you're going to be an online coach, how to talk to boring people. Like as a coach, like you have to, if someone's like a dry wall and you're only asking them like yes or no questions, they're only going to answer yes or no. So like, how do you ask leading questions? How do you just be the first person like to communicate to someone? Gymnastics, weightlifting, one-to-one coaching, group class coaching, gymnastics, all these things that you're expected to know as a coach, bodybuilding principles, programming, periodization, that stuff's not really taught. So like for us, like, all right, like we have to teach our coaches internally, but why don't we take that, figure it out for our coaches, and then take that, package it, and say, right, come join us in Bali, which is a great place to spend 4 to 5 weeks, learn how to be a coach, do it with a cohort of people that you can leave with peers, and then go off and start a professional coaching career. I think that's something that it exists online.
Yeah.
But not in the way that I would want.
No, definitely not.
I've done it online with a few courses, and I haven't been happy with how the product they've had. It seems very mass marketed. And like our retreats, we have very small group based, like 12 to 15 people max. So we would do the same. 12 to 15 people. I bring in coaches from our gym. They would coach individual sections that they're really strong at. And then there'd be a culmination at the end where you're coaching on the floor and getting actual practical exercise. You're learning how to eval. You're being evaled. You know, things like that, where you're then paired with a Bambu coach and you follow them for like 3 days of how they coach and what they go through and their prep. So it's something that excites me, but there's a lot to go into it.
Yeah, that sounds incredible, and it's something that we talk about all the time. Like, yeah, in Australia, you can do your level 1, level 2 personal training, or you can do your strength and conditioning cert 3 and 4 as well. And yeah, we get people come, and then when the minute they have to coach, the actual learning is not there for what's actually applicable in the real life situations and settings of it. So we often say, like, if we can just make sure they have their accreditations and we get a really great person, we can make them a great coach. But it often for us means that we need to know them on a deep and personal level first, because the people you're getting straight out of these qualifications don't actually know how it works in the real life setting of it. So
there's one of our coaches at the gym. She's never coached a day in her life. But like her personality is something you can't, it's straight out of a Disney film. She's so energetic, so happy, so genuine. And her passion for fitness is, I think, unachievable for some people. But like, so I approached her and I was like, hey, have you ever thought about coaching? And she was like, I think about it all the time, you know? And she's like, I'd love to, I just don't know where to start. And I was like, cool, like as long as you're coachable and open to learning, let's bring you on and put her through like 2 months of shadowing, observing, just chatting back and forth about things like how to communicate, like what are the main principles of like points of performance of certain movements, how do you cue, how do you see and correct, presence and attitude, all the things that are really important of coaching. And during that time, she proved herself to be on the floor. She shadowed, and then now she's assisting, and she's been with us for over a year now, and she's doing so well. Yeah. And only after 1 year of coaching, her future's so bright in that like profession. Yeah.
So you have a lot on your plate at the moment and going forward. From, I guess, where you have been to now, what would you classify as your greatest achievement?
My greatest achievement. So I think being able to have a loving and exciting marriage through all the things that Carrie and I, my wife, have been through, both like my military experience, you know, getting into property development and accommodation, opening a gym, running a retreat company together, doing online programming, all these things we've done in tandem. And I think that a lot of times it's really challenging to prioritize what's important when you have things that are so fresh and you have to really work on, like a new business, right? You have to get it up and running and being profitable. And a lot of times people can do that with their partner and like put their relationship to the side. And I think what I'm most proud of, or my accomplishment that you were talking about, would be maintaining like an amazing relationship with not only my wife, but like my business partner, best friend, kind of all this stuff, and still enjoying life through the process of doing all those things. It can be tough. Like people say it can be tough, like owning and operating a business with your partner. I mean, yes, there are some challenges, of course, but like we both love what we do. I think being able to build successful businesses while building a successful marriage, I'd say that probably is the pinnacle of like what I'm most happy with.
Yeah. That's very good advice for two people that run a business together and are getting married next year. And I think Bailey and I often look to you two as like role models for us of like the way you do things and knowing that you're doing them together whilst managing a marriage in the background. And like we always say that running a business together, people always say, how do you do that? I could not work with my partner. And I think, oh, like I can't imagine now not working with Bailey alongside me and being able to go through the experiences and like the hard days and the good days and share that with someone else, I think is an experience that like not many other people get to experience. And we are so fortunate in that. And it makes your relationship so much stronger because
100%.
You have to communicate very efficiently and effectively with each other, which carries over into, I guess, your romantic side as well.
Yeah, it's funny because like now, making sure that you have checks and balances to make sure you're doing that's important.
Yeah.
And I read like an article, it was one of the owners of a very like large business, and he had mentioned something like one thing he does, which is, hey, there's one night during the week minimum that is blocked off for time. No matter what's going on, that is date night. And no matter if he's away or home or whatever, that's the priority. And I read that and I was like, yeah, I like that. So now, like, if you look at my phone every Tuesday on my calendar, let's go next week, there's like quality us time.
Yeah.
And it's in bright pink with Carrie and I. And then inside I wrote, weekly time to spend with each other, dinners, sunsets, TV, or trash TV, pup ventures, absolutely nothing together. Please keep this time free of unscheduled everything. Understand there may be unforeseen emergencies that come up. If this happens, we made up with love. So it's understanding like, okay, this time, no matter what you're doing, and I tell everyone if I have a meeting scheduled from 2 to, or whatever time to when that starts, I'm like, hey, we have 10 minutes. And if we're not done, it's a reschedule and I have to go meet my wife because that's the time I've committed to her. I think that's important, is to make sure that you're treating and showing up in your relationship the same way you would show up in your business.
Yeah.
Professional, ready to like be there and be present and do things to grow it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so half of your tattoo is it your forearm here? One team, and then she has the one dream.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean to you both? Because I know it's a saying that you say a lot and it's kind of a little bit of your ethos of how your relationship works together.
Very much. And it goes into both our relationship and also our business, where it's like, hey, like we have one dream and we build a team around it. And especially with the gym, for example, there's no way that we could have accomplished what the gym has accomplished to date with only Carrie and I running it. If I was the only coach, Carrie was the only person doing like design or whatever, there's no way. So understanding that, hey, like you need to lean on people to help to grow things to a better thing or to a better like situation is important. And so everything we do is like one team, one dream.
I love that. That's so good. So our little like saying that we have worked on developing this year, because we called our gym Bayfit after Bailey O'Brien, but then we wanted to rebrand and move it away from just Bailey O'Brien. So we took away the BAI and we realized that as a relationship, we are very all in on everything we do. So we now use Be All In as our, I guess, what our dedication to commitment and to what our gym community is and how we're growing this concept about being all in. So what does being all in mean to you?
Good question. I think if you're going to be all in, there's no reason to do it half-ass. And if it is, and like I've talked about this with a few people before. If you look at like an answer, and I just hired a coach on, she's starting in January, and I'm very excited for her to fly in and get stuck in with the crew. But at the end of our interview, I told her, I was like, where are you sitting with like coming and joining the team or not? And she answered, and I was like, you're either a fuck yes or you're a no. There's no in between. There's no like, hey, I'm in. Because then I don't want you here. Because then that means you don't want to be here. But if you're fired up and like, hey, I'm here to fuck shit up, like, let's go. That's when you're going to get the best out of every experience you do. So if you go all in on a few things versus going in on a lot of things, you're going to see way more success. You're going to have more committed like relationships with people. Like that's the whole volume over, quantity over quality. So take a few things, go fuck it up in the best way possible, and then crack on with life.
I love that. That is a great way to find being all in. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation? Because I'm pretty happy with where we're at, but if it's anything you would like to say, we can kind of roll on from here.
I just appreciate you guys thinking that my life is interesting enough to talk about for however long we've been talking.
That has been such a good chat. Like, I'm so happy with how that went. For our first guest, honestly, it couldn't have been better. And I can't reiterate how much Bailey and I look up to both you and Carrie. And I think from the moment we met you both, it was a huge point of ours. Because I think our gym, we maybe just started Be Fit, and we saw this, like, if we stay at this, if we work together as a couple, there is a bright future ahead of us. And when we had lots of, like, people doubting us and even us contemplating whether it would work being in a relationship and making this huge dream of ours a reality, seeing it done ahead of you just honestly has instilled us with hope and a desire to work really, really hard to get there.
Well, it's very kind. Thank you. It's nice to hear that you guys have gotten something out of it. I remember you guys in the cafe that day. You both had your fucking notebooks out and you were like, writing shit down. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're like, we're strategizing and like coming up with stuff at the gym. And I walked away. I was like, fuck yeah, man. Like, I love seeing people like really get like that ignition or like the passion for like, all right, let's make this work. Because like if you never quit, you won't fail.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like the only time you're going to fail is if you quit. And I think that's being all in, right? Like that's the whole point of like not being able to, unless it's actively taking money out of your pocket and it's not working, then okay, you need to have the understanding of like stopping something and moving to something else.
Yeah.
But like there's that point of like, all right, we're not done yet. Like let's give it a good crack.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to wrap up our podcast there. For those listening, like, subscribe, comment. I think those are the things that you do. But again, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with us. And we're so excited for this weekend, the Burgener Level 2 course.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yay.
Dude, that was gone!